Now I would like to introduce the next speaker, Marcus Neustetter. I hope I'm pronouncing it correct. He is an artist who is interested in cross-disciplinary practices in site specificity, socially engaged interventions, and the intersection of art and activism. I personally first time met Marcus during just like a quick chat where I think both of us lost the count of time, and I was so fascinated by the way how he tells stories. So I really wanted today him to share it with more people. So the floor is yours, Marcus.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having me. And obviously thank you for hosting all of us today and sharing these wonderful interactions. It's been quite a journey already. So to all of the previous presenters, beautiful work. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to take you on a little journey, because the work that I'm presenting for the Moon Gallery is actually packed with a whole lot of other stuff. It's not just the work, it's full of a journey that's in there. So I'm going to share my screen with the presentation, and I hope it all works out. You should all be able to see something on the screen. Brilliant. So the objective of my work to date in exploration of space in one form or another has been in trying to make sense of what it means to be looking for something that we don't know, being caught by uncertainty, being caught by the unknown, and actually aspiring towards something that I myself don't understand as an artist. And for that sense, my fascination with space has always been there, but I've never had something to hold on to. So while I've been working with astrophysicists to understand what it's all made up of, and exploring that space, I really got into holding onto something, and that is holding onto a key collaborator who's floating in outer space. And that key collaborator is a satellite that was launched in 2009 called Sumbandila Sat. Now, Sumbandila is a Venda word. Venda is one of the South African names for, is one of the South African languages, vernacular languages, and it's Sumbandila means lead the way. And I thought it was a really apt and interesting name to be giving a satellite that went out there, not only because it's obviously visionary, but to a certain extent, I was hoping it could lead my way. Now, I'm a South African. I'm very proud of the fact that there's a satellite out there. And immediately I thought, well, maybe this is the alternative to the Google images who can tell me something about where I am and who I am. And I was able to, through the Sunsat program, which is the people organizing the satellite, get access to the images that were being fed down to Earth from the satellite. So this orbital satellite was kind of scanning masses of land in Africa and sending them back to South Africa for us to interpret and make sense of. And I'm just showing you a few of those images that are absolutely exquisite. And I got so inspired by these images, I wasn't sure what I was looking at. I just zoomed in and started to extract content and created these digital collaged images of simplified forms of what I was seeing, to see what would happen if I made these as painterly gestures, but they're digital paintings. And I had such a good time. I was just getting images and processing them and looking at them and trying to make sense of my relationship with the satellite. But then while I could track the satellite, suddenly these images stopped coming. And I was told that a solar storm had damaged the satellite. She was still out there. Sumbandila was still floating and orbiting Earth. And we could track her via the satellite tracking software that you can all access online. And at any point, I knew where she was, but there was no way of communicating back or forth or getting any images. So I made a second set of images using the existing material, and I started to disrupt the data. I started to create new images that are disrupted digital forms of what we can't see anymore. The data that we might be getting, but we can't make any sense of. The attempt of her sending us something and the frustration of not being able to communicate in both ways. And it was for me truly an interesting way of deconstructing my own work and understanding what it means to not be able to translate this experience. And in that journey, I thought of, well, what can I do as a tribute to Sumbandila Sat? What can I do to say to her, we are listening to you, we are here, we are following you, or I at least am still wanting you to lead the way. And I did these digital traces of some of the images and tried to look at places where I could launch them. So I was involved in a project which was a redevelopment of a building. And I said that the chimney on top of the building looked like a rocket. And I think this was the rocket factory in Johannesburg that was built many years ago. And I created this urban legend. And the beauty of this, we actually called the building the rocket factory, and the facade of the building became a digital trace of one of the images. And for me, it was a tribute to this aspiration towards launching a new rocket into space to send another satellite to go and meet her and connect with her somehow. And that rocket factory became an incredible stage for all kinds of strange performances that speculated what it would be to be in space with Sumbandila, that asked questions about how do we explore these spaces and what is the experiential element on our bodies if we were there with her. Interestingly, this was quite a while back, and the notion of the mask was everywhere, as a reference to some of the other presenters that were speaking of that. But it also meant for me that the space that I was in was about knowing that it was a space far away from who I am and where I am. And the people that I was working with in the area were also foreign. So we're talking about Zimbabwean migrants that are living in Johannesburg, that are hungry, that are needing to find work, and that are currently working in these big warehouses sorting trash, which is right next to this rocket factory. Interestingly, this was quite a while. And so while I've got this, this interaction with these participants working in the rocket factory with me, I'm realizing that they are actually, in a way, foreigners in our own in my country and in my city. And I realized that they are going through material and processing it and recycling it. And I thought, let me make a film about their journey. So this particular work was a film about them exploring a new space and finding something, which I guess is this unknown entity that gives them a sense of hope of the future. And so these were all gestures towards trying to make sense of what it's like to connect to this other space and not have Sumbandila's lens to help me look back. And I did all kinds of experiments of trying to communicate with Sumbandila. You can see me here in Banff in Norway, in Canada, throwing lights into the sky, hoping to speak to Sumbandila. I even made a runway in one of the meteorite impact craters outside Johannesburg using glow sticks and lights with a whole bunch of children from the space school that was there, kind of a up-and-coming project that was happening many years ago. And we built a runway to say, maybe the satellite can come down and land here with us, as a gesture towards a connection. And part of that gesture was also building observatories to try and map and track not only Sumbandila, but obviously all the other imaginary spaces that are out there. So this is a community dome that we built with my collaborator Bronwyn Lace in Sutherland at the major observatory there, where we worked for 8 years with communities to try and connect the sciences and community development. And this was our big gesture towards a host for future thinking and mapping of territory. But for me, what was interesting is it became my way of trying to understand Sumbandila that's out there. And similarly, I started drawing with light, started drawing with 3D rendering tools, started drawing in tilt brush, started drawing on paper, and started to draw the journey that I assumed Sumbandila was taking and the visions that I wasn't getting photographically. And these drawings you can see are inspired by archaeology, they're inspired by astronomy, they're inspired by observing, they're inspired by scanning. And so the journey and the story is very much captured in some of these hand-drawn elements. And what's important about the hand-drawn is it allows you to play and explore. And so I started to explore space maps and actually even explore other people's drawings. So this was at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum, a series of works. I don't know if you can hear the sound.
No, I don't hear the sound.
No, all right. So if you forgive me, I'm going to just do that again. And I'm going to click share sound, and we're back. And just as a gesture, yes. These are drawings from other artists that are in the old planetarium at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum, where I took them and I filmed them. They were old drawings of speculation of what Mars or other planets could look like. And so I got very inspired by that. And those inspirations started to be come together in a series of stamps. So I've got Sumbandila, as you can see over here, on a stamp that I designed for the South African Postal Service. So, you know, I couldn't speak to her, so maybe I can send her a letter with her own stamp. But at the same time, the journey evolved into us kind of exploring the idea of observatories, building different kinds of observatories, all of it in a hope of actually communicating. Here it is, old planetarium, in Bloemfontein, which is a small town in the heart of Johannesburg. And in it, this planetarium show was all about trying to tell community stories. I worked with a large cast of youth from the area, trying to connect to this question of what space holds for us, what the future holds for us, and what kind of speculations we could make around our imaginary and unknown future. And that extends into my studio, where performance is now taken over, and the performance of actually playing with space and the unknown becomes so important. How do we communicate to each other? How do we create our own rockets to try and reach these spaces? How does an identity which is not naturally part of the space race, if you want to call it that, of lack of a better word right now, how is that manipulated and actually finds its way culturally into this new territory, whether it's a new colony or whether it's a new way of thinking? And what are the dialogues that we form? So a lot of the pictures I'm showing you now are different performances. This, for example, is in Senegal, where we're creating a speculative space using Chinese junk and talking about a kind of colonization and invasion of Africa to a certain extent, but at the same time, the colonization and invasion of a foreign territory that we don't know about. And so these performances become about tracing new spaces and territories and speculating about what Sumbandila might be seeing. And in that, she's always present. There she's currently flying over a part of Africa as we're live in our performance in one of the planetariums, trying to make sense of our interaction with her. The magic of this moment is that we literally were able to capture Sumbandila at that very moment, flying above us a few hours before. And that interaction was just a completely magical moment for an attempted dialogue. Naturally, we never caught her, obviously. But the same thing happened again at ZKM in Germany with other collaborators trying to find ways of interacting with her and actually creating large drawings as a response of the dialogue with performers in the space. And that interaction is all about figuring out how can I get back in contact with Sumbandila and how can I create a map of interaction with this with this friend, this ambassador that's out there. And one of the things that we created, or I created with a group of participants and a Zimbabwean and South African sculptor, was this set of robots. Now, these robots are little lights that scan the sky. And when they log on to Sumbandila, or the location of where Sumbandila is, they flash the light, they flash a Morse code saying, please lead the way, lead the way, lead the way, lead the way. And in a sense, trying to connect to Sumbandila in one form or another, and hoping for a response which I obviously haven't gotten yet, but I think it is all about the response that I imagine it could be, which is very much in a lot of my practice, the collaboration and the dialogue with others in making these works. And I'd like to, before I show you the actual work for the Moon Gallery, do one more, show you one more thing about the dialogue. And that is a project that I call Imaginary Futures, which is about what is that imaginary space that we're in. And here I've been collaborating over the whole year of lockdown in South Africa and beyond, and other countries, and doing at the moment some work in Senegal and Colombia, etc., kind of getting different performers together and talking about what is the speculation of our future in a foreign space. And here's a very short little moment of one of those interactions. So what you have here is a series of Zoom performances with multiple people plugging in at the same time, experimenting and exploring the notion of how we can cross-communicate between each other, sending signals between each other's spaces, explore the notion of foreign spaces, but more importantly for me, speculating about a future that we don't know anything about. And to that extent, my relationship with Sumbandila has been an incredible one where it's been about not only her leading my way, but me asking her to lead the way again. So my submission for the Moon Gallery is a tiny little letter to Sumbandila, which comes in the small form as everyone else's works does. But as you unpack it, it moves from a small centimeter cube into a 30 centimeter long a string of drawings. It's a drawing done under microscope, so it's got a long journey embedded in it. And on the reverse side of it, it's got a Morse code message that says, "Lead the way again." My, I guess, love letter to Sumbandila for all the inspiration and journey that she's put me on, and the dialogues that she's put me in contact with an incredible amount of collaborators and participants over literally a decade's worth of work now. And so it's all embedded in this tiny little letter called "Lead the Way Again." I hope that all made sense. Thank you very much.